Welcome to the only place where real, raw, and vulnerable conversations happen with IFBB Bikini Pros to give you an inside look at their struggles, strategies, mindset, passions, and all of life beyond the stage. This podcast is made to inspire, motivate, and remind competitors and the average gym goer that even the most extreme lifestyles and elite athletes have their ups and downs. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm your host, Celeste Rains-Turk, and now it's time for the Confessions of a Bikini Pro podcast. Today's guest is the co-owner of BA Nutrition and Fitness 24/7 gym facility in Lewiston, Idaho.
Lewiston.
Lewiston, Idaho, as well as a personal trainer, lifestyle coach, and competitive athlete. She has been helping others transform their lives through fitness since 2016. I don't want to give her away, but this athlete believes that fitness is not just about looking good, but also feeling good. Her passion for fitness started young with playing multiple sports through high school. In college, she started her journey in the weight room and transformed through her own fitness journey. And competing in both bodybuilding shows and powerlifting competitions, she found her true passion in bodybuilding. After many years of hard work, she earned her pro card at Universe in 2023. But what's amazing is this competitor actually started her journey in 2016 as a figure competitor and then came back in 2020 as a bikini competitor who did a few national shows in 2022 where she was in the top callouts. And then, like I said earlier, she came back and she won her pro card in 2023 at Universe and made her pro debut where she placed 13th, which is incredible. And now she's gearing up for a full pro season. So welcome to the show, Bailey Harrison. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, it's my pleasure to have you here. I am so grateful that you've given us your time. And before I dive into everything, I like to ask if there's anything you do or think about right before your heel hits the stage.
To breathe.
Yeah.
I do always take it as a good sign if I'm nervous because I think, a little bit alert nerves just means you care, but
Mhm.
definitely try to just think about taking a deep breath and kind of just going over my routine in my head.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's important. Is that something you do even on a consistent basis, like breath work or pausing to think about what you're about to do?
Probably a little subconsciously, yeah.
Ah.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I find like athletes, what they do before stage is something that they do on a consistent basis that they find helpful for them. So that's why I was curious. And I know for you, like you seem to be really inspired or maybe driven by like various quotes and mindset driven influences, really. So I'm wondering what are some of the more salient beliefs or thoughts that you really try to reinforce in your life for the success that you've had?
Well, I just always feel like everything starts in the mind. And if you're just
Mhm.
not in the right mindset, then you're not going to get where you want to go. And it's a lot of times just about doing it, but the mind is usually the only thing that's stopping you from getting there. So especially like in a fitness journey, like just being confident and telling yourself the right things can get you halfway there a lot of times.
Mhm. So true. Because if you're telling yourself something, your mind wants to seek out things to confirm that. It wants you to be right. So it'll want to do things, find things, focus on things that align with what it is you're telling yourself. And I think sometimes forging this mindset, it can stem to early childhood sports. It could stem from difficult experiences someone's had. I know you played sports growing up, but were there any difficulties you've faced along the way that have been really formative to who you are as a person, a coach, an athlete that's allowed you to really foster these beliefs?
Yeah, I think that it probably really did kind of start in high school. So I was always one of those athletes that, you were playing a sport year round, like in like alternating off. And so there was volleyball, basketball, and then I actually grew up on a cattle ranch, and so I participated in rodeo, and so that was sometimes going on during other sports. So it just kept you really busy, and so you kind of had to learn how to like prioritize things and make sure that you had time to get everything in. But in terms of like hardship, I grew up in a family that was from the outside, I felt like people thought was like perfect, I guess you could say. Like
Mm.
my mom was a school teacher, my dad was a rancher, but they actually ended up getting a divorce in high school. And I think kind of going through that, it kind of led me to try to seek control in my life. And I really did that through food and not eating. So controlling my intake. And that was probably a big pivotal point in my life where I had to find my own way out, essentially.
Mhm.
So then going to college, it was kind of like a reset. Like I went into the gym and there was this lady who taught the Pilates there. And before I'd go to Pilates, I would run on the treadmill because, I was running multiple miles a day as I was under eating. And she asked me, she's like, why are you running before you do Pilates? Why aren't you lifting weights? And I told her that I didn't know how to lift weights. And so she said, well, if you let me help you with your nutrition, I'll teach you how to lift weights. So she made me
Mm.
a deal.
Yeah.
And I really think that the weight training, like with her guidance, I found something I wanted more in the weight training than the control of the food, essentially.
Do you think she saw that you were struggling, like visibly she could see it and wanted to help you?
Yeah, I think she definitely saw. I mean, I was, sub 100 pounds, and I mean, you can see that in someone when they're struggling in that way, and just in not in just in how their physique looks, but also, their habits. The fact that I was running multiple miles every time before I came to her class was probably a pretty good indication.
Mm-hmm. Was it difficult for you to start increasing the amount of food you ate, or was that like a no-brainer because it meant you could then learn to lift?
You know, it was mentally a struggle at first, but I was really blessed by her. She increased things very slowly. And so she really just kind of took it on as more of an educational thing and never made me feel like there was something wrong with me and I was doing everything wrong. So she like taught me about like macros and just like she slowly increased things for me because I think she was well aware that I was eating hardly anything. So, um, and she's still a really good friend today. And like I said, she's just one of those people that come into your life and just completely make your life take a 180. So,
Yeah, it sounds like if it wasn't for her, I mean, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
no, no, because she's also the one who got me into competing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because so
So literally.
she, yeah, literally. She competed herself and was just about to go into a contest prep. And so I kind of got to see her go through that journey. And she even took me along to her first show. And just being there, I was like, oh my gosh, I want to do this.
Wow.
So,
That's really amazing. And so now I want to kind of understand that further because was she a figure competitor?
she was.
Okay.
And that's how I ended up in that category because she already knew those poses for
Yeah.
one. And she was like, these poses are so much easier. And so that's kind of how I got started in that direction. Because I definitely did, I mean, figure was a little bit different than it is now, but I still definitely didn't have the muscle mass or the density to be in figure, but
Hmm.
still a good starting point.
Oh, yeah. It's so awesome too because figure gave you, I'm imagining it gave you this drive to want to put on more muscle and
Yes.
rather than getting smaller or trying to I guess bikini at the time was still fairly small, whereas it probably gave you a leg up with how bikini is now. I mean, you've grown so much over the years. I was looking through your stage shots and I'm like, holy moly, like she's just grown exponentially. It's incredible to see the muscle you've added to your frame and continue to add to your frame. Like even in your most recent update showcasing what your improvement season has done, I'm like, this is amazing, and I don't want to blow past your history, and we'll go back to that. But I am curious, since we're talking about it, what's gone into the last like year of improvement or so? Because you maintain a relatively lean structure as well, I would say, but it just looked like you added, literally, you added the weight right on your shoulders and your glutes.
Well, really it's consistency, and I really treat my off seasons like it's a prep. So like the meals are still all the same and the training is still super hard. Like I was joking with Chris, well, I guess he was joking with me. I was like, oh, we're 12 weeks out, we're going to start cutting, we'll start prep. And he's like, what have we been doing for the last 2 years?
Right? That's literally it, isn't it? That is the key to it. I mean, in an improvement season, I think there is more flexibility. There's a little bit of room for like less structure, but at the end of the day, you're still doing the things you got to do, which is tracking your training, your nutrition, your supplementation, and focusing on your mindset. I mean, I think that is how you mitigate some of those big swings, physique wise. But it's amazing, when someone makes notable improvements throughout their career, it makes you go, well, what is it that they're doing? Because sometimes athletes hit walls, where you don't see as big of improvements. But even just for you, I'm not even just talking about when you started, but from 2021 at the Ben Weider to 2023, the IFBB Pro debut at Governor's Cup. Did anything change or have to change in your approach for training, nutrition,
Yeah.
supplements?
So I changed, and let's see, right before the Ben Weider, I actually changed coaches. So
Oh.
I was with a different coach previously, and then um in the end of the summer I switched to James. And I didn't even plan to do the Ben Weider. We were like I just started with him because I had just finished doing the national circuit with a previous coach, and I wasn't happy with how I was progressing and how I was placing. And so I wanted to try a different approach. And so I started with James, thinking that like we were like kind of slowly increasing calories. I was thinking we were like going to go into like a building season. And then there was just like a couple weeks out from Ben Weider, and he's like, why don't you just jump into this show and see how you do? And it was like, oh, okay. I hadn't worked with him that long at all.
Yeah.
And so we jumped into that, and then we did a little, and then we went into a little building season before we did a couple shows the next year. So I think sometimes you just have to find a coach that you feel, because my other coach was one of those coaches that like before I was like on stage and going on, he was like, oh, you look great, you're gonna get your pro card, this is it. And then I'd go on and I'd get dead last. And that happened at like 3 national shows, and I was like, I can't mentally take that. Like I want somebody to be brutally honest with me. Like
Mm.
and I from what I'd seen, I thought James would be that, like one of those people that was like just tell you the truth no matter if it hurt or it didn't.
Yeah.
Um and that's what James gave me. Like it was just like he's more blunt than my previous coach, which was I was ready to dive in that way. And even before I got my pro card, like in every prep with James, it was always like, yeah, you look great, but we don't know how it's going to go until you get on there. And I just think that's a really good way to approach it, because then you're not setting an athlete with this expectation and then
Mm.
them coming off stage being like, well, like, why did it go that way?
Oh, absolutely. I think there's a difference between encouragement and I guess maybe grandiose encouragement.
Yes.
Where you're like, okay, now hold on a minute, because if that was true what you said backstage, why did I get
Yes.
seventh place? Like, I'm confused. Now, granted, if you're splitting center and they say, this is it,
Yeah,
and it
yeah.
didn't happen, you could still be like, well, it
It's
could
close.
have. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
close. It makes sense that they said that. So I could see why you wanted a more blunt approach. Now, were there any truths that were like told to you that were actually hard to swallow?
Um, I mean, I'm a terrible poser, but I knew that. So a lot of the truths that he said was like, yeah, I need to work on that. Or, one of my harder places has always been like my lower tie-in, right? And just getting enough muscle there to come through. And I mean, I guess like none of those truths like hurt me, I guess you could say. Like it was just kind of they were what they were, but there was like those are things you can improve, It's not like, oh, you don't have this, so you can't do it.
Yeah, I love that. It's not like a genetic.
Right.
Yeah, it wasn't a genetic difficulty. It was just this is somewhere that needs our attention.
Right. Right.
Now, when you were having really great placings, you were very competitive. What do you think actually made the difference from almost going pro to actually winning your pro card?
Um, well, I think one aspect was just getting enough muscle because I think having, been such a low body weight, it took a little while to get my muscle up to my frame, right? And
Mhm.
so I think that over the years that has been a big jump. And then posing, like I know some girls have it naturally, but it was never a natural thing for me. And it's still something that I have to work on literally every day. And I have to put a lot more focus in, and which is fine. I don't mind working hard for it, but I mean, for me, that was just has always been a struggle.
That is so crazy you're saying that, because literally one of the questions I wrote down for you was your posing has been very smooth and was especially smooth at Universe.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess that would have made a big difference, is that at Universe you brought a very smooth posing presentation. I mean, you were hitting your mandatories with such confidence, and you didn't have all these extras, these extra flares, these extra maybe distractions sometimes, and I know
Yeah.
Team Atlas is really like um militant about that, and I work with Angeline, who used to
Yes.
be associated,
Yeah.
and she supported and helped me in seeing the difference between like being a good poser because you're on stage and you're moving a lot versus being a good poser because you're hitting your mandatories and doing so in a way that makes the most sense or looks the best. So how then did you gain that composure and gain that ability through your practice? Like, what would you be telling yourself? Because I know there's other people listening, like, that's my weakness too, but her posing looks great. So, what did she do? What did you do?
There were two things. So one, leading up to especially up to my pro debut, at the beginning of that year, I had an app in my phone that had a daily task, and that daily task was to at least pose 10 minutes. So literally every single day that year leading up to getting my pro card, I had posed every single day. Like I was in my heels for 10 minutes. And even if it was like in a really busy day where I'm like, I just have to pose in the kitchen, right? Like
Yeah.
they just have to be on. And then the other thing was actually when I would practice my routine, I would try to envision that I was doing it in front of that panel of judges. And, for whatever reason, I was always specifically visualizing Sandy down there because she's at
Hmm.
all of those shows. But I would just try to envision them all in that line and what their facial expressions would look like while I was doing my routine.
That's
And
awesome.
I feel like that really helped make me more confident on stage because I had visualized that setup so many times.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I think that's so important. I don't think it's enough to just pose, especially not in front of a mirror and just see yourself. I think you have to literally think about how the stage lights are going to feel and work yourself enough that you start getting a little bit shaky. That was
Yeah,
something I noticed about your routine at Universe. Like, I mean, Gilco's videos are amazing and you see everything.
yeah.
I have received a Gilco video and I loved it. It was awesome. And it revealed to me where I could improve in my posing a lot, but you didn't shake at all. Like there was nothing moving. I was like, even a little bit of nerves, I would think, but you were very solid. Do you attribute that to putting the heels on every day, or what do you, or the pre-stage routine? Like, what is that attributed to?
Well, on one side, I definitely felt the nerves, so the nerves were
Okay.
definitely there. But I think it was practicing, and I I felt super confident going into that show. Like I don't think I'd ever felt like my body was that ready, and that
Hmm.
just brought some type of peace to it too, like if when you feel like your body, like you're ready, like you literally did everything you can do, it does bring a little bit more peace to the stage. But I think practicing was the biggest piece for sure.
So you saw your physique and you're like, that's a pro level physique. I know I'm ready.
Yeah, I mean, of course there was always the chance that that wasn't going to happen, but I knew that I had made a lot of improvements from the previous year. And so maybe it was more so I was at peace with what I was bringing.
Yeah. Like finally you felt like, okay, my expectations actually align with my physique or vice
Right.
versa.
Yeah.
Hmm. So then you win your pro card, and I mean, you've been working on that goal for a while. You win the pro card. What was the feeling like? Like, was it what you imagined it would be?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there was no letdown. I had totally embraced that whole feeling. And I even stayed a couple extra days there, which I'm glad I did because I got to go check out like Bev's gym and just kind of
That's awesome.
embrace the area, and it was truly, after working that long for that goal, it was a it was a very good moment. Like I still can look back and like I can feel what I felt during that time.
Wow.
And there's just not really a lot of things that compare to that.
Isn't that right? Like, you achieve something, and to actually soak it in, you can always go back to that moment. Like, to be able to go back to something and feel it again is such a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
And you then went on to make your pro debut. How did the pro debut experience compare to maybe what you imagined, or oh, and also your NPC experiences?
So the day after I won my pro card, James called me and he's like, you should just he's like, just jump into a pro show. I was like, okay. And so we did, because Sandy didn't end up being at the show that I won my pro card at. I don't remember what happened, but she couldn't make it. And so Tyler ended up head judging. So he wanted me to get in front of Sandy. And
Hmm.
so we picked, the pro show was 2 weeks later in California. And I had my best friend, I called her and I was like, do you want to go to this with me? And she's like, yeah. And so
Aw.
she came and she did my tan. And, it was, I really liked the pro show. They did make you feel special, and just like getting to be around some of those other girls, like girls that I'd followed like forever in the division. And um, I didn't have a lot of expectations going in, and I knew that the mailman must be coming.
That's okay.
um, I knew that I probably wasn't going to play super high, but I was kind of curious to see just how I would stack up against the other girls. And I think it did help kind of push me moving into a building season to know like
Mhm.
I still had a lot of muscle that I needed to put on to be competitive
Wow.
with some of these other girls.
It's pretty amazing. Did you realize that when you were backstage, or did you realize that when you looked at the stage shots later?
Not so much like when I was like standing next to them. I feel like it was more so like looking at the stage shots and seeing like for the muscle mass that I had had to be able to see my tie-ins, we had had to get quite a bit leaner, which um isn't always what they're looking for necessarily on a pro stage, right? Like they want the
Right.
pop and the fullness. And so, but in order for me to see like tie-ins, I had to get like way leaner. And so, like seeing the photos, it was like, yeah, we need more muscle so I don't have to get so shredded.
Yeah. Is that what
And
Sandy told you as well?
yeah, she just said like they all like my feedback, actually my feedback ever since I started has been you need more glute size and more glute density. So,
Interesting.
yeah.
And I mean, obviously, I feel like your upper body is like they probably told you it's perfect, I'm imagining.
Yeah, they didn't really want me to have never said anything about my upper body and they said that it's always been where it needs to be. So,
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, to be able to put on more muscle mass as well, especially with the glutes, and then to be able to show the tie-ins. Like I remember Sandy after my North American show, she's like, everything looks really good, but you look young and you look like you need to grow a lot more. She's like, your conditioning's perfect, but you're almost like so your conditioning is there, but if you had more muscle, you wouldn't have to be this conditioned. And I was like, you're right. So then it was just, growth mode turned on, and you've been in that grow mode. What have you done specifically for the glutes to so you could accomplish not having to be so lean?
yeah, so I mean in my training I'm working legs like 3 days a week.
Okay.
And so a lot of glute specific work. I've done I know everybody's like, "Oh, hip thrust." And I do hip thrust, but I I really think that a lot of my like glute progress has I feel like has been from like the lunges and the split squats and things where I'm getting a lot deeper of a stretch in that tie-in area.
Mm. I feel like when you do lunges and you like put your hand right in that glute tie-in area, you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Feels like a rope is right there. It's like, wow, that's how I know I'm getting a
Yes.
good enough stretch. I'm like, okay, I feel like that rope is tying up.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that's
And
amazing.
there's lots of ways you can do them and not feel them as much in your quads. At least I can. Like if you're setting up right, you can get it to be a lot more glute focused so you don't have to worry about overdoing the other leg muscles.
I've learned for me, I've experienced when my chest goes to my knees versus being upright, like having that lean forward, because then that glute is more stretched and extended.
Yeah. Yep.
That's
Yep.
what you do
That
as
forward
well.
one. Yeah.
Yeah. And then like having a raised foot has helped me as well, like raising the foot on any sort of reverse lunge or split lunge or a split squat or a Bulgarian. If the front foot is raised a little bit, it seems to create the same effect.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like stick like a 45-pound plate, like one of those rubber ones under there. Those are like
Yeah.
I think that's like the perfect height.
Yeah, because then you're not like if it's just a 5 pound, it's kind of like
Yeah.
at least if it's a bumper plate, if it's 10-pound bumper plate, it's not very thick. But if it's a 45
No.
bumper plate, or it's like, at least at my gym, the 5 pound non-bumper saddle, like just the 5 pound, whatever, it's actually pretty thick because it's not very big, but it's thick. Um, anyway, I think that it's great to actually utilize and figure out what works for you when it comes to feeling that stretch in your glutes, because I spent so much time, I don't know if this was your experience too, but I spent a lot of time working out wrong for bodybuilding.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
I would do the movement like do a lunge. But like, was I really building where I needed to in doing that? Was I really pushing it? Like, how has your maybe trainer mindset and coaching mindset played a role in your own training?
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, just being a trainer, I think it has allowed me, like working with so many people, to find different ways that have even worked better for myself as I'm trying to help clients navigate that. Because I do quite a bit of like in-person training. So I have a lot of like hands-on time with my clients. And I mean, just working with so many different people, you learn a lot. And whether they have like an injury or just they're like, I don't feel this there. And you're like, well, you should. And
Right.
so you're like, so you have to like, okay, well, we gotta like try to, give them a different cue or shift their feet a little bit or, play with their hip positioning. And so I think that that's definitely helped me. Another thing that I had another trainer tell me just in terms of like intensity was like when you get to the end of your set, someone shouldn't be able to pay you $10,000 to do another rep. And I was like,
Whoa.
yeah, I was like, that brings on a whole new level of intensity. And I mean, obviously, you mean that like with good form, right? Like you don't want
Right.
to be like completely broken down. But I think if you are looking at the end of your set like that, like you maybe could have done one more, right? So,
So true. That's been like a sticking point for me because I was always so committed to like, well, the rep range says this, so that's what I'm gonna do. And it's taken me some time to be like, okay, the rep range says that, but like you can do more. Just do more now in the next set, raise the weight versus, well, it says 12, so I'm gonna do 12. You know what I mean?
yes, it's like a mental block because your brain is just like counting and it's like, oh, that was it, and it shuts
Right.
down.
Yeah, exactly. And you have a background in powerlifting, so does that,
Mhm.
I mean, it seems like it probably helps because your powerlifting background has likely contributed to a lot of strength and ability to push or um, do major movements. And when you can push heavy in a major movement, generally your accessory lifts are stronger too. So I'm wondering if that's influenced your programming or your approach.
Um, there's a couple really good things that I got out of powerlifting. Powerlifters are really big on warm-ups, right? And just
Mhm.
I actually had a coach when I was powerlifting who would do my workout programming for me. And there was a lot into the warm-up and just like the core stabilization that he had programmed in there. And that was super helpful just kind of in carrying over into like even bodybuilding workouts because you owning a gym, I see people all the time just like going to the gym, they grab their weights and they're in their first set.
I
Like,
can't believe that.
I know,
My body would literally rip in half if I did that. I guess it's
right?
not even possible.
Oh, it happens quite a bit though. But I think that that was super beneficial. The other thing that powerlifting really did for me was it gave me like this base strength, right? And so
Mhm.
then going back into bodybuilding, like your rep ranges for hypertrophy are so much stronger, right? Because you have this base strength that now you're working up here with these weights. So that can really help pack on a lot of muscle too.
Yeah, I think it's underrated. Like,
Right.
I think more bodybuilders should do some powerlifting training. Like, you don't have to go and try to get a max bench, okay? But if you
Right.
did, it would help you probably in your front raises and in your shoulder presses and in your incline presses. Like, when my coach has me do like a lot of the more compound lifts right after competition prep, like we go into like capitalizing on those gains, right? Um, it's power lift and I'm so strong. And then as we progress in the building season, suddenly I'm doing weights I never did before. And I really, if I could go back in time to younger Celeste, I'd be like, just do these big movements. Focus on this. Don't be fancy, be here. So I think it's amazing, like you're speaking and you're testifying to the fact, okay, I'm obviously stronger as because my baseline is better.
Right. Right. And a lot of people are always worried about like their waist with it, right?
Yeah,
But I don't think that, I mean, even if you just did a phase of it, it's not like your waist is going to grow significantly and never come back in, a 6 month period. So I don't know. I think it's something that people should give a go, especially if they need a different focus from physique and they can kind of shift that focus over to like being strong and powerful in the gym and what your body can do instead of just how it looks.
absolutely. I think the blocky waist thing is always such a strange argument, to be honest, because for one, I mean, if you look at a lot of power lifters, you're not actually seeing a very blocky waist. You're seeing
No.
most of them are more aesthetic now than they've been in the past, but
Mhm.
you don't see a very blocky waist. However, it's so interesting to me because a lot of bodybuilders, like they do everything they can to turn off the core. I would be more worried about my waist growing if I started doing like a side plank. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like
Yeah, I'm
that's
looking more
more,
of like,
yeah, that is like
yeah,
more of a threat than doing a heavy deadlift, even with a
right.
weight belt on. Because the weight belt, yes, you're breathing, at least when you're doing it properly, you're breathing into it, right? You're pushing against it, you're bracing your core. You're not letting it just sit there and like suck your abs in. You're pushing against it, like that core bracing. I feel like that's a lot less impactful on muscle development in the abdomen than something like doing tons of leg raises and tons of side, especially like side bends and things.
Yeah, or any sport that's like twisting movements, right? Like
Right.
any of that rotational.
Yeah. Now, I guess it's interesting though because like CrossFitters, they do seem to get more of a waist
Of it.
development.
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe that is, I mean, a lot of their things that they're doing do kind of run into more like some like agility type things too, though.
Yeah,
So
you're
it's
right,
not
like more
just like
Olympic
strength.
lifting.
Yeah.
Hmm. It's interesting. I think it's underrated though, like to I think powerlifting and compound lifts, like this should be a staple. Even if we go back
Yeah.
to like the golden era of bodybuilding, those a lot of those people were when you watch like Generation Iron or Pumping Iron or any old school bodybuilding, you're seeing them do these movements as well. Like
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
squatting heavy.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Some of those old school bodybuilders were super strong.
Yeah. So I think that's really cool that you did that and that was something of interest to you. But then again, I think, well, what was it about bodybuilding that made you go, I want to be a pro in this sport? Because I mean, you did rodeo, you did
Yeah.
volleyball, you had a lot of different interests. So what was it about bikini competitions that made you go, yep, that's what I'm gonna invest time in going pro in?
Um, that's a really good question. I think a couple things. One, I'm super competitive. And I think sometimes it can be easier as a competitive person to do a sport that maybe isn't as team based, right? Like I know that like we're on teams, but as compared to like volleyball or basketball, like there's a lot of other people like playing to win with you. Whereas like in our sport, like you have to do the work, right? Like
Hmm.
you have to get up, you have to go do the cardio, you have to go to the gym, you have to, eat your meals. And so I guess maybe it comes down to that control thing, right? Like you can control more of the variables in this sport.
Yeah.
And also, it was hard. And I guess maybe some of it is the challenge, right? Because I know that some girls walk into this sport and they're like, oh, win this one, get my pro card super quick. And it wasn't like that for me, which has been different than some other areas where I've kind of succeeded easily. This was an area that was not as easy. And so it pushed me to really break out of a comfort zone. Like this, there's a lot of things about competing in prep that aren't comfortable. And it definitely has pushed me into growing into someone totally different than I would have if I just stuck with everything that was easy.
Oh my gosh. I love everything you're saying. Like, I quit volleyball to pursue fitness, and that led me to bodybuilding. And it was like, oh, finally, like I'm doing something that I'm the only one accountable for these.
Right.
Because you know how like if you're on a team and you perform, I'm just going to be straight up, you perform very, very well and at a high level, but your teammates don't. It can be frustrating. And I
Yeah.
felt like finally I could do a sport where I don't feel like everything's so dependent on everybody else, and I'm always being told what to do and how to do. And I was burnt out a little bit, so that adds to it. But anyway, when you said that like you were very successful more naturally in those things, that's how I felt as an athlete in sports growing up. Like volleyball, I was just being the MVP or being the defensive specialist or being
Correct.
the captain. That was very it was easy. It was something that I was very good at. But then like
Yeah.
bodybuilding, I'm like, damn, I'm like humbled, like it's good for me
Yes.
because then like you said, okay, you're in the gym. It's just like you're running sprints or you're running lines, but you're by yourself, you're doing it. You are the only one holding yourself accountable to this versus on a team, you're doing it because you want to help your team win. You want to motivate your team, help your team
Mhm.
push. It's a different and are in a starting position. So
Yeah.
it's a different mentality, but it's also very similar. So how did your history in sports actually influence this longer journey and that development for you as a competitor, both in season and out of season?
Yeah. In the sports that I played in high school, I had some really awesome coaches, and I think they instilled a lot of work ethic and just like morals into their players. I mean, these like some of these coaches were ones that had led teams like to like multiple state titles, and they
Wow.
had these processes that were like pretty like, if you weren't 5 minutes early, you were late type of thing.
Uh-huh.
And so I think that that definitely helped over here because it's like you have to show up. And so you just kind of treat it like your practice, right? And just like before you go out and play a game, they're always like, it doesn't matter what's happening over here. This is your focus now. And so that's
Mm.
kind of like your training in the gym, you can kind of shut all this off and this is our focus. And I think it's not only a good escape, but also just a way to make sure you're hitting those markers.
I love how you worded that. I think that gives insight to people who were athletes growing up and people who weren't. That's the athlete mentality. It's and anybody can foster it, anybody can grow it, and yes, it takes a lot of repetition and time, but it pays off because like you experienced in your bodybuilding journey, that showing up over and over and over again despite placings and outcomes, you eventually were the champion, right? You eventually got what it is that you were working towards. Now, I want to know why you wanted to be a pro.
Oh, you know, I I guess I don't know. I don't even really know what set it into my head. It was just like I'm definitely one of those people where when I decide something, that's what I want to do. And I think it was just one of those things where it was like how cool would it be to be a pro athlete, right? And it was
Yeah.
just like once I decided that's what I wanted, it was like, okay, well, what do we need to do to get there, right? And so then it was just a matter of like doing all those things. And I'd been to a lot of national shows before I got my pro card, and it's hard, right? It's so like you work so long and then you get up on stage and you don't get that goal. It is hard. And it's okay to like be down about it for a little bit, but you have to almost use all that like energy that and disappointment to just put in way more work going forward. And just
Mm.
like if you don't redirect that energy, it could eat you really fast. Like I can see how people go on stage and just get completely deflated because they don't place as well and then just be done because it's a mental game, and it's hard to take that disappointment. But I mean, if you keep going, it could be even more sweeter when you do win.
So true and so well said. It's kind of like if you look at the show that you're about to do as the end all be all, it puts so much pressure versus if you look at it like this is another opportunity and whether I succeed in the goal that I've set or I don't, the lifestyle and the choices I make will stay the same. If you're
Yeah.
grounded in that process, like you said early on, well, what was different? 2 years, like what have we been doing? It's the same thing.
The same
Um,
thing.
that I think makes someone successful because they love it and they're
Mhm.
committed to it. It's not because I want the pro card, I live this lifestyle. It's I
Right.
live this lifestyle and it can lead me to becoming a professional athlete, which I've decided I want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And you'll get there. Like there's like nobody who's been successful had yeses all the way, right? And
Hmm.
so you just have to like, okay, there is no end goal because you just keep pushing towards the goal and then you set another one. Like there's always going to be a goal to chase, so you might as well keep chasing it.
What's your goal now with this upcoming season? I mean, you've got Wasatch Warriors and then, or Wasatch Warrior, and then you got Pittsburgh Pro. And then I'm sure you'll kind of decide from there. But what is it that you're wanting to accomplish?
I definitely want to get to the Olympia, and I know that whether that happens this season, next year, or the year after that, it's just going to be a work in progress. And I think for my goal for this first show is because it's been 2 years since I've been on stage. So I just want to get, comfortable on stage and bring the best package that I can. And we'll know what we need to do from there.
Yeah. So wait, how long has it been? two
It's
years,
been
right?
almost 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you on that. I've been thinking about this, and I don't know if I'm alone in this. So actually, I'm really glad you said that because I'm like, oh, I could ask Bailey. Do you ever feel like you have a little bit of like ring rust, you know? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I've been I think that might be my biggest fear for this first show is like, I don't know if I remember what to do on stage, even though I've been practicing. I'm like, it's been a long time.
I've even thinking that before. Like I'm like, oh yeah, like I'm gonna have to exfoliate my skin. Not that I don't on anticipate, but like there's gonna be a time frame to that. And I'm like, what is that time frame? I don't even remember. And then I'm like,
Right.
I have to decide like, am I gonna wear my hair this way or that way? Like there's other things that I haven't thought about in like it since September of 2022. So I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
wait,
Yeah.
I don't know. Like that's where I'm nervous about getting on stage again, like a little bit, but I'm more
Yeah.
nervous about like I keep having these those pre-show dreams. Like I keep having these dreams. Like last night I had a dream. I like didn't do my like I never signed up for tanning.
Oh
And
my
then
gosh, I've had that dream.
it's awful.
It's awful. And then you're on show day and you're like, I'm the only white person here.
Yeah. I didn't sign up for tanning, so I haven't done my makeup. Should I do my makeup or is that gonna look weird? I only have my competition makeup. It's like
Oh my God.
that's the I'm glad that it's a universal experience.
Yes.
It's kind of entertaining, but sometimes I'm like, dude, if I have one more dream that I gotta like do something before I go on stage and I didn't do it, I'm gonna cause a fight. So I've been taking little notes like, okay, yeah, did I book? I have a whole Excel sheet. Like, have I booked this? Have I done this? Because that's helping me to remember when is the time? Like, okay, if you booked your tanning, then when do you need to start exfoliating? And it kind of helps put it together.
Your dreams are making sure you forget nothing.
Yeah, right, exactly. Oh, I love that. And I'm so grateful that I'm not alone in that. And obviously, you said you're a little bit worried about like how's it gonna feel when you get back up there? Like, what am I doing? I even came to this realization the other day. I'm like, Oh yeah, comparisons, like comparison rounds. You got like
Yeah.
switch with people and not that I haven't been practicing, but it just kind of it hits you that you're like, yeah, I'm gonna be standing on this side of the stage and I'm gonna go out. It's not just that process, you know?
Right. Yeah. All the little things.
For real. So, and obviously, this is something that you're consistently supporting other people in too, which is awesome because it keeps you involved and focused, I'm sure. And like you said earlier, it gives you more insight for your own journey too. But what inspired you to open a gym, and how has running that business impacted maybe your life and your view on the industry?
Yeah. So, funny thing, our gym started as a joke between me and my friend Amanda. We were, she actually did a competition and I coached her for it.
Oh, wow.
And when we were coming back from her show, her husband was driving us and we were like, she's a physical therapist. So she has and she was a personal trainer before she was a physical therapist. So we were joking, like, well, we should just open a gym, you know? And so then 6 months later, her and I are like sending each other rental spaces. And we ended up getting this space and we bought all the equipment to get us started. And we were in that space for about 2 years and we decided we didn't want to have a landlord anymore. And so we bought this bare piece of land and we built the gym from the ground up essentially. And so now we have two trainers that rent out of our space and we have open gym memberships that our members can get in 24/7. And so Amanda does physical therapy out of our gym and I do some nutrition consulting and also some personal training as well.
And the business model, was it something that just kind of came as, because it sounds like you established, okay, we're going to rent a place and
Mhm.
you were committed to the dream, but maybe there wasn't a concrete business plan until it was there.
Yeah, it really just did kind of evolve, and sometimes it's kind of one area of my life that I just felt like I was in this car, and we were both just driving, and it just kind of drove itself to where it's at.
Wow.
But yeah, I don't think when we opened it, we definitely didn't have this vision of like, oh, we want it to look like this, and we want it to be, what it is today. We just kind of started it was like, well, we both want a space, so we have this gym and then we run our own personal businesses out of it too. So it kind of serves as a dual space, right? And the members kind of help us pay all the expenses. But and then just things along the way, we were having problems with our landlord because gyms can be kind of loud sometimes, and we were right
Yeah.
next to their office, and they didn't appreciate that. So, we we had to find a new place once those 2 years were up, and there just wasn't any spot to rent that we felt fit all of our needs. And so when we saw the land, we're like, well, I mean, if this is, what we're doing long term, it's a better investment if we own the property anyway. And so we were in the first rental space 2 years. And then while our building was being built, we had to move to a different location
Oh my
because
gosh.
they wouldn't extend our lease. And so, but it was all, the lucky thing for us is it was all on this same road. It's called
Oh,
Brighton
that's
on Lewiston.
amazing.
So we were down here and then we jumped to a rental space and then we moved all the gym equipment a second time into the permanent home. So
Wow. That's an investment too.
yeah, it's definitely we're in it for the long haul.
That's awesome. Well, I think that's wonderful that you guys have done that. Like, is it something you saw a need for in the area too?
It's definitely a unique facility in that like there's quite a few other gyms,
Hmm.
but there's not one that is focused. Like we have more trainers and like long-term trainers because a lot of gyms will have personal trainers, but those trainers are college students that are there for a couple, 1 or 2 years while they're getting through school. And so, I mean, all of our trainers, like, this is what we do, right?
Right.
Like, Travis is one of our trainers, and he's there from 5 to 1 or 2 every day, and he has all of his clients, like, he's almost full. And then Amanda, she's there Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and she's back to back with people so I think that makes us pretty unique in that not all gyms have such consistent trainers.
Hmm.
Um, and I think we all just kind of bring a unique aspect to the environment as well. And it it really is a very inviting space. We have a lot of people that come in, and they're people that have never had a gym membership before, right? So it's a space where people can feel a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah, that's really cool that you offer a space like that. And also, I love how you put that. Like, there's a longevity aspect to the trainers there. I think that's such a great point that I hadn't considered, but that would definitely set a gym like yours apart from a more chain gym, really. And
Mhm.
this is going to be such a random transition, but I would hate and I would regret if I didn't ask you about this. Like, I really want to go back to your upbringing on a cattle ranch.
Yeah.
What did a day in the life look like for you? And is that something your family's still doing?
Yeah. So, in terms of a day in the life, if it wasn't a school day, I mean, we had like morning. So when kids talk about chores,
Yeah,
our chores were very different from what most people's
I
chores
bet.
were. Our like morning, it was like there was horses. If it was a time where we had chickens, like there were typically feedings to be done in the barn right next to the ranch house, and those had to be done morning and night. And so like if it was now in the winter, there was a pretty good chance that we'd probably have like bottle calves, like baby calves that had maybe lost their mom or that we had to feed. So you'd have to like mix up milk and go feed them bottles. So those were like kind of daily, but I mean, my dad had us helping with all sorts of things, whether it was like moving cattle, because like in the spring and the fall, we had to trail the cows to like winter pasture. And then we'd bring them home during the summer so that they were close when they were calving and it was colder outside, so we could kind of keep track of all of them. So, um, or like, you know, fixing thick fence or picking rock. And it was definitely like true ranch life. But my brother, he's 4 years younger, and they're in the transition of having him take over the ranch. And so as my dad, they've always run it as like what they call a single man ranch. So they
Hmm.
run about 300 head of cattle, which is pretty close to the max that you can run on a ranch without having a full-time hired hand. And
Oh,
so as they're transitioning my dad out, like he'll sell some cows, and then my brother will add to his herd so that it's kind of taking over what my dad had.
makes
Because
sense.
not only is it just like what one man can take care of, it's also what the land can support, right?
Hmm.
So just making sure that they're not exceeding the grasslands and how much they want to pay for hay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a whole business, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I'm really fascinated to know more about like, is this something you are still interested in or ever were like really passionate about?
No, my brother got all that passion.
Yeah.
I think that some of it probably, like through the divorce, probably soured some of my time out there,
Hmm.
unfortunately. But I I knew that I love to go back out there and visit, but I mean, ranching is tough. Like a lot of people, like it's kind of a hard physical lifestyle as
Mm.
well. Like, I mean, it's a lot of physical labor, and just like my brother will send me videos of like it's freezing out there and they're breaking ice and hauling in calves into the basement to warm them up.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work. And I mean, I'm so glad that my brother gets to do it, but it was never a passion. It wasn't something I wanted to go back to.
You mean that having a cattle ranch isn't like this homestead perfect lifestyle that you see on Instagram?
No, it's definitely not. And it's not like Yellowstone, like it's not.
It is amazing how much things get romanticized. I mean, we should romanticize our life, but when you actually live a certain way and you go through it, I think it could change your perspective. I imagine there's a middle ground. I mean, having a cattle ranch is different than having maybe a couple chickens.
Right.
But you being exposed to all that and doing that work for so long, you're like, And then you did mention the divorce probably soured it, maybe had an impact. If that's something you're open to talking about, like just the impact of the divorce on maybe I know it affected your eating habits and the desire for control, but did it impact how you saw your family? Because you had described it as like a perfect family unit. So was it surprising to you?
Yeah, so essentially what happened is my dad cheated on my mom. And so um we moved into town with my mom, and I also don't have a great relationship with my dad. He
Because of
he
that?
def because of that, and he struggles pretty hard with alcohol. And
Hmm.
so I think our relationship is strained because of different values for
Yeah.
sure, and different lifestyles. And I think I'm super close with my mom. She's my first call, she's my rock, and
Aw.
I definitely wouldn't be where I am without her. She's one of my best friends. So and I think that when you see someone you're that close to and that loves you and supports you and you've known has always been there for you, you see them get hurt, I think that that hurts you too. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I, I saw what she had to go through, and I, it's life isn't fair sometimes, and she didn't deserve that either.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't just hurt you to see someone you love and who cares for you get hurt, but like that's a different type of betrayal. That's a family betrayal. That's a relationship betrayal. That's a life betrayal. And you witnessed that happen to your mom and her have to likely grieve and rebuild so much.
Yeah, yeah. Which she has. She's doing super well. She has a lot of really good girlfriends in town there, and she actually she sells barbecue sauce. So she makes homemade barbecue sauce and she sells that. So that keeps her super busy.
That's awesome. Talk about an entrepreneurial bloodline.
Yeah, yeah. She was a school teacher, so she was actually the home ec and shop teacher in
Oh,
our high
that's
school.
so cool.
So, but
Wow. Well, thanks for sharing that impact on you. I mean, I cannot really imagine what witnessing that was like. Um, and even the impact that, and maybe I should ask you this too, like, did it impact how you viewed love or relationships?
yeah, I think it'd be hard to be so front line of something like that and it not, I feel like it's made me maybe not be as open and almost try to be hyper independent, um, even in a relationship where it's like trying to just, keep everything over here, like, instead of letting it be more of a partner. Like it's hard to be a partnership because when you see someone else get like thrown apart from that, it's hard to trust that that partnership isn't going to end in breaking seams, I guess.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. If like most of us, our fears are based on our past experiences or our perceived threats to an experience based on like what we've heard others go through or seen them go through. So the fear that you have is perfectly valid, and it makes sense that you have that fear given what you witnessed. Um, and there's a difference between a fear being valid and a fear being like totally justified and substantiated by your own evidence. Um, your evidence is what happened to your mother, what happened to your family.
Yeah.
And now it's like you have to separate that from your own like desires and wants for a relationship and life.
Yeah. And I mean, I definitely feel like that's an area that I'm still learning and still like kind of have to almost check myself. Like, am I closing off because I'm worried
Mhm.
or, like, and just even in like competing, like I have to be like, I need to allow Chris to be a part of this instead of being like, no, this is mine,
Yeah.
like, I guess just being more of I view it as being more of a partner, right? Instead of just trying
Mhm.
to stay independent.
Yeah. So, how long have you and Chris been together?
We've been together 6 years,
Oh yeah. That's a
long time.
committed long-term relationship.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. So I imagine there's been a lot of learning opportunities through that for you.
Oh yeah, for both of us. And just, I think with any relationship, you you have to you have to put in work, right? Like it doesn't just happen. You have to like sometimes we've had to evaluate like what do we need to do to make this better, right? Like what can we change, or like we've had tough conversations, and it's only made us closer after we have them.
Yeah, sometimes tough conversations feel like a major threat to the relationship when they're
Yeah.
happening. And then it's what you do with it that maybe bolsters the relationship long term. And it sounds like y'all have gone the bolstering route, which is wonderful.
We try. I mean, it's still a work in progress.
Hey, it will never be perfect. That's what I've learned. I'm like, you know what? I'm
Yep.
not perfect. This will never be perfect. I'm shoot. As long as we're still talking about it and working on it, that's what
Yep.
matters. So I
Oh.
know we've covered so many different things, and I appreciate you being so open about your journey and your life. And I want to get your best advice. So, what would be your best advice for someone who has never competed before but would like to? And then your best advice for someone on their road to pro?
If you have never competed before, just do it. Like I think there's so many people that like want that to be a goal, but you're never going to know if you love it until you do it. So just like commit. Like do your research, hire someone that you think you're going to vibe with, and just get up there and do it. Even if you feel like you're going to make yourself a fool, you won't.
So true. And what about for someone on their road to pro?
Keep working. Like you're like you may feel like it's really far away, and it might be, but it's worth it. Like I I don't regret working that long for it at all. It was the best feeling, and I'm so glad I kept putting in the work each day, even after I thought it wasn't going to happen.
That's a really good word right there. I appreciate that. And I want everybody to be able to share their appreciation to you as well. So how can they connect with you, work with you, and follow your journey?
So they can definitely reach out to my Instagram. I respond to everybody on there. I also have a website, so they can sign up through there, or contact me through my email. Either one works.
Awesome. We'll put that in the show notes page. So, you guys, that's always on celestial.fit/podcast. Not only will you see how to connect with Bailey as well as myself, you will also see a full summary of this episode, a bulleted list of the topics we covered, and the episode timestamp so you can go back and listen to your favorite parts or share it with your friends, your family, your teammates, let them know what resonated with you. And of course, it means so much to me and to the athletes when you share that you listen and what you loved about the podcast. So please, I encourage you to reach out to us and let us know, or share it on your story, or leave a rating and review. It means a lot. So, all that being said, Bailey, thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me, Celeste.
Yes, it was my pleasure. And to everybody listening, I hope you all have an amazing rest of your day, night, or morning, wherever you are in the world while you're listening to this episode. Just make it awesome.